On today's show, we are looking at three prospects in the 2025 NHL draft who would be fantastic fits in the late first, early second round for the San Jose Sharks, and they're all from my neck of the woods in the USHL.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this show, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I'm your host, Sebastian High, the USHL scout over at Elite Prospects. And on today's show, I'll be joined by a guest, JD Young, from over at Locked On Sharks, as we'll be discussing three potential fits for the Sharks at the NHL draft in Václav Nestrašil, Jacob Rombach, and Cole McKinney. Three players I've watched a lot of this season and I've liked even more. So lean back, make yourselves comfortable, and let's just dive straight into the episode here with JD.
And now we bring in Sebastian High from Locked On NHL Prospects and Elite Prospects. We're going to be talking about some guys that Mike Greer might be interested here as kind of late first, second round type of players. We know Mike Greer loves him big college-bound boys, and we found the biggest college-bound boys that we could find. So, Sebastian, we're going to start with a guy who you said, and I quote, violent and fun. So we're going to start with one player, Václav Nestrašil, forward, playing with Muskegon in the USHL, 6'5", 190 pounds, right-handed forward. Is projected to go to UMass. 61 games this year in the USHL. He had 19 goals, 23 assists, and 120 shots on goal. So, what makes Nestrašil such an intriguing player in this draft?
I think in like a one sentence elevator pitch, like it's violence, creativity, and runway with this player. There's a lot to still kind of come together in his game. He's still quite raw in a lot of the habits, but the flashes of brilliance are probably the brightest I've seen in the entire USHL among like projectable like profiles of players this season. He's a guy that just never stops working, but beyond just that intensity engagement, which you need to see in any player that you put the power forward moniker onto, there's also a lot of skill and like handling ability. He's so deft with the puck on his stick. He's quite agile, even though like he's like the way I described his skating in the scouting report episode I just filmed, and like I can link that in the description down below of this as well if you want a full 30-minute deep dive in into this player's game, is that the way he skates on the ice is like an agile albatross. He's wonky, but the actual agility, the fluidity, and like beating opponents onto the inside, making them miss is really impressive. So the skating is kind of a thing that's still coming together, but in flashes is really, really effective and strong. And I think he could really improve it with time. And defensively, he's engaged, hard shot, and really, really, really good playmaking ability. So there's a lot of aspects in his game that could hit, and he doesn't have to hit on every single thing in his game in order to be a really useful NHL player. And if you're thinking about projecting a guy to the NHL, having a player who has multiple avenues to be either a high-end NHLer or a useful piece in your lineup makes a lot of sense, especially when you're picking in that, like, I don't know, 20 to 30 range at the end of the first round.
All right, so that's just all you kind of bring up that power forward, right? And the Sharks have done a good job of adding some more size, but still, like you look at their star players, Michael Celebrity, not the biggest dude in the world. William Eckler, not the biggest dude in the world. Will Smith, not the biggest dude in the world. And they've added some size with guys like Holtinen and Musty, and some of these other, Igor Chernyshov. But do you think like? You bring up that power forward, which I do feel like is the one thing that the Sharks forward group is kind of missing. Is this a like legitimate power forward type of player?
I think
project to be possible. That's one of the avenues, right? Is a power forward type of player.
I think, however, he's going to be playing, he's going to be at the very least power forward adjacent. Like he plays with violence. Like that violence is never going to leave his game, especially like I think he'll be playing in the NHL at like 215, 220 plus pounds.
It's a big boy.
He's at 190 right now, but 6'5". Like he looks almost closer to 6'6" at times. Like he might add an inch of on top of that frame as well in time. Like he's a really, really big customer. And he has that combination of the physical frame and the willingness to engage. He keeps his feet moving. He finishes his checks. He's just a real pest. He gets underneath opponents' sticks and under their skins as well. So I think with that, you kind of have a player that's going to be a power forward style guy. And as you mentioned, I think that's something that the Sharks could really use more of in their pool and in their lineup. Musty and Chernyshov, I think, are two guys that have power forward elements, especially Chernyshov. Musty's, I think, more of like a big skill guy at his core. He can be violent, he can be physical, but it's not what he is in his core. With Nestrašil, I think it is like really part of his game, like and part of his identity. And adding that piece to play on your second or third line long term, who can bring the handling skill, the creativity to elevate the higher end pieces in that lineup to complement guys like Celebrini, like William Eklund, I think would fit in really nicely. And he can also play on the PK. He has a good defensive stick work, and that versatility, I think, is going to make him quite appealing to teams picking later on the draft. And especially because like there is some risk, and we'll talk about that later, a bit later on here with the habits. But still, I think that for the Sharks in their needs, this is a guy I'd be swinging on 10 days out of 10 on the draft.
Okay. I mean, you talk about kind of what he needs to work on. So what do you think the habits that he needs to work on, or what is that one thing that you think may be holding him back, or stuff that he needs to work on when he goes to UMass?
Consistency and awareness. I think like consistency in terms of driving the middle of the ice. Like sometimes he can try to do like too fancy things like along the boards rather than being super incisive with his drives. When he's incisive, he's super effective. Beyond that, I think in the habits, it's just the awareness. Like one of the things that irks me the most while watching him, and there aren't many things that irk me. It's very fun to watch, even from like a scouting and like trying to dissect his game kind of standpoint. It's that he's constantly just like crowding the puck carrier. Like he doesn't stretch the ice at all. He's trying to like basically like back up his teammate by skating 2 feet behind him. And there's multiple rushes in Muskegon where you have all 3 forwards rushing within a quarter of the width of the ice. And it's like, just go wide. Like you stretch the defenders. You're making it so easy for them.
So it's like when my 7-year-old soccer team plays and they're all just around the ball at the same time. It's the exact same thing.
The team sticks together, and they're taking that a bit too literally on the ice. But at the same time, he's gotten better on that front as the season's evolved. It's not like every rush is doing this, obviously, but it's still an aspect in his game that irks me. And there's more like multiple things like that. Like we don't have time to really delve into all the minutia here as we're talking about 3 players in this episode. But there's some of these details that need work and need ironing out. But he's off to the University of Massachusetts next season. Initially, he was only going to go there in like a year and a half's time, but it was just announced like last week that he's making that jump earlier. He's going to UMass, and that I think is really useful for him because physically he's just so dominant in the USHL. He's not being challenged to the point that I think he needs to in terms of pushing the pace more, elevating that pace, getting a bit more inside driven, being challenged physically too, in terms of having opponents who can stand up to him, that he's not just like running through and running over like a locomotive, like he is with like all the 5'9" USHL defenders who struggle to stay on their feet against like 6-foot opponents, let alone 6'6" guys. So a lot of things that are still going to kind of grow in his game with time, but give him 3 or 4 years in college, and I think that you have a player that can slot into your bottom 6 and who can elevate his game to a second line standpoint with time and settle anywhere in that middle 6 longer term. Who can be versatile, move up and down the lineup where you need him to. That versatility, the defensive engagement have made him very consistent this season in Muskegon. He played on the same team as Ivan Ryabkin, and those two are very interesting because they have similarities in their physicality. Like Ryabkin is like angry violent. He gets very frustrated and he chases hits, and he's gotten suspended like 18 times already since arriving in the USHL. It's been pretty funny.
He's played 3 games and suspended.
Like he's constantly missing games. It's like, another suspension. It's happened again. Nestrašil is violent more proactively. I think it's a lot more projectable with how he uses his physicality. He's also a lot bigger. Like Ryabkin's very physical and violent in like a 5'11", 6-foot frame, and he's just very, very thick. Nestrašil still has that to fill out and to get there, but he's so much more consistent in his engagement than Ryabkin. Ryabkin is a floater to the like utmost extent, and Nestrašil, like he has almost like a 4th line grinder mentality, but has like top 6 level skill elements in his game. And I think that's something that'll make a GM like Mike Greer, who appreciates these bigger guys who work hard, who have that playoff mentality,
Yes,
Nestrašil's
but
made
also
for
have
the
that skill
playoffs.
too.
And the skill, yeah. So he has the skill
Yes.
to score and produce and create offense and complement the bigger, like the skilled guys in the lineup, while also bringing these elements that you can just like rely on in games where you need him to play consistent, like physical, heavy minutes without perhaps getting all the offensive zone starts when other players are getting those instead.
The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to get in on the action. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same game parlay for a chance to win big. If you want to take your big swings on the sporting action and make your calls before the game even begins, FanDuel is the best place to do so. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
All right. We're going to switch now and talk about a USNDTP. USNDT. I always get them. Anyway,
NTDP.
I always like you would think by now. It's been like 50 years and I was still screwed up. Anyway, we're going to be talking about one of the US players, Cole McKinney. So Cole McKinney, forward, 6 foot. I get a little bit smaller. Might be 6'2" apparently. But anyway, 199 pounds, right-handed forward, played 51 games, 24 goals, 31 assists, 108 shots on goal, heading to Michigan. So, Sebastian, what makes Cole McKinney an intriguing prospect?
Extremely projectable bottom six center, in my opinion. He plays the game the right way. He's a dog on the puck, very hardworking, and he's just been the reliable 1C on this team all year. And he hasn't really gotten the hype that you would expect the first line center on the US NTDP to get in his draft year. But I do think that he's going to be a guy that rises into the late first round by draft day. Like he's mostly being ranked in the second, even like into the third round by many outlets at the moment. But with the way he plays the game, how he's able to connect play with his passing, he's gotten so much better as a connected passer this season. He's a really line elevator. And I think that that ability, while working hard, making like good two-way decisions, he can play on the PP, the PK, 5-on-5, is very reliable in all those situations. And even when the NTDP this season has played very inconsistent hockey, which has been for much of the year, he's a guy that stabilizes things. He settles them down. He just plays that north-south heavy style, strong along the boards, keeps his feet moving, gets to the middle of the ice, constantly pass and move, loses himself in like the blind spots of defenders. And it's just so middle-driven. His shot, I think, is slightly above like average in terms of like third line projection. He has a pretty heavy release, could be used as like a one-time option in a second power play. I think it could get to that level, especially if he's used as a shooting threat at the University of Michigan. And on the other hand, as we're talking about the University of Michigan, one of the reasons I like his projection a lot is that the players who go to UMich and especially hardworking physical centers who could use a little bit of improvement in their skating mechanics. And McKinney's a decent enough skater, has gotten better this season, but bring that up to an above average level would really help his game in terms of that north-south pace. That's a program where these players flourish and get significantly better and are just shot into the NHL as like plug and play guys down the lineup. And with McKinney, I don't think there's really like top six upside, maybe some middle six upside, like maybe settles in on a second line role if your team isn't like contending yet, but gets moved down the lineup once you get like your star level talents to really drive play. But a consistent guy who can win you draws, plays hard, plays physical. Listen, at 6 foot, 200 pounds, looks more like 6'1", 210 when I watch him play. Pretty heavy, strong on his feet, doesn't get pushed off the puck. A lot of things that just scream bottom six center in the NHL. And when you're picking late in the first round, and especially if it's like your second or third pick of the draft, getting a guy that can just fill in that slot is just so valuable. And considering that the Sharks lost David Edstrom in that Askarov deal, I think that adding in a player like this can just like fill in that slot long term, and he can play with anyone on his wing. Like I think that like anyone like Kasper Halttunen or Quentin Musty, like these players would slot in very comfortably in like on his wings. And he's a very projectable player. So not as exciting perhaps as Nestrašil in terms of the upside and the skill, but a guy that NHL teams are just going to love. I think he's going to interview very well. I think he's going to rise in terms of the combine and the interview results. And overall, a guy that's just going to maybe see like a B-Tech Jet Luchenko rise going into the draft of a guy that he's going to play minutes. He's going to play minutes pretty soon. That's worth a swing, especially if you like even beyond just the Sharks. Contending teams in the late first round are going to really like a player like this that could maybe be playing like fourth line minutes in 2 years' time on like a cheap ELC contract.
That is very, that's going to be my next thing is like, especially with the Sharks, right? Where you feel like you have celebrating. I know Will Smith, there's questions if he's going to be a center or not, but like I think they're going to do everything they can to make sure he's a center there. You have Phil Beasley, who had a little bit of an up and down year in the AHL, but like has shown flashes. Just adding some more pieces there where it just gives yourself some flexibility where it's like if Bisa doesn't pan out or if you have to move Bisa to the wing or just giving yourself some, flexibility. I know they also have Brandon Svoboda. They drafted in the third round last year, who's looks like he's going to be a bottom six type of center for the Sharks at some point in a couple of years time. But yeah, just giving yourself flexibility in there. And that's, I think where McKinney, where it's maybe just such a high floor, like you said, but maybe just not a super high ceiling. And if that's your second pick, or like you said, your third pick, you could be doing worse, right? And I think that maybe just comes down to draft strategy, especially if you're picking like a Schaefer or a, McKenna or whoever you're picking, or not Misa at the first pick. And it's just like, let's just get a nice solid single or double here and feel really good about our draft, right?
Pretty much, but it could even be a triple. I think like a third line center, like if he's able to hit that level, that's more valuable than most like second line wingers in the league in terms of the minutes he's going to play. Like I think he'll be like a third liner at his peak and at his ceiling in the NHL, but he'll be playing as many minutes as any second liner because of that special teams utilization. So the versatility is going to make him fill the role of maybe a second line player while playing on the third line. And the offense is probably going to be more indicative of a third line player. But another thing I wanted to add as well is like an interesting piece for the Sharks specifically is the importance of having young players that stabilize your team when they arrive.
Yes.
So many young players you have to kind of insulate, you have to shelter, and you can't, if you're a team like the Sharks who've been rebuilding for quite some time, have a lot of young pieces coming in, you can't shelter everyone. You got to play somebody. And McKinney's the kind of player that you don't have to shelter as much. And I think that's something that would be quite appealing if you're just trying to get someone that's going to stabilize things and just settle things down a little bit in the bottom of your lineup. And as you're mentioning, like going down to the list of center prospects with the Sharks, there's no one that kind of fills that void, in my opinion, as a potential 3C who's young. And as soon as he comes into the league, could play hard-nosed defensive minutes, win you draws pretty much out of the gate. I think that's an important piece to have as a rebuilding team. I think every other rebuilding team almost has someone like that. The Habs have Owen Beck, and I mean, Jake Evans is almost like the projection I'd have for Cole McKinney if he ends up on a fourth line rather than a third. Still like heavy PK minutes, like most used PKer in the league this season, Jake Evans. But just being a really, really reliable guy, and I think that especially when you're at the tail or in the back half of a rebuild, adding in guys that are going to be there a little bit earlier and can join the team quicker and be reliable when they're there, that has some real value. And like we've seen that with a lot of other successful rebuilds in recent seasons. And I think the Sharks would be pretty wise to go down or at least explore that avenue as an option because, as I said, I think McKinney's a very projectable guy. And there's a couple other players that kind of fall down like in that kind of mold, like Jack Nesbitt, for instance, who might even be a top 15 pick in this year's draft after being outside most first rounds for most of the year because he's just big, physical, reliable down the middle. And there aren't that many centers available in the first round beyond the top 15. And that'll make guys like Cole McKinney go earlier because teams really, really, really like drafting their centers in the first round.
Makes sense. Yeah, and I think another thing too, right, is like celebrating full 200-foot player. At least that's kind of the path he's on. Will Smith doesn't feel like he's going to be a full 200-foot player. So I think you having
150-foot maybe if you're
like,
optimistic.
He does his best in the defensive zone, but having that guy who you could throw out like as your third line center who can kind of help eat some of those Will Smith opportunities there. It makes a lot of sense for that. And again, like that's not a knock on Will Smith. Will Smith does what he does very, very well. But you got to know your strengths and weaknesses of your player. And if you're asking Will Smith to go out there and kill penalties or, play hard-nosed minutes, you're just not putting him in a position to succeed. So yeah, like the more I think, because I've been very much like, I wouldn't be surprised. Like I do think the Sharks need to add more defensive, and we're going to talk about defensemen here in a second, but adding more just those kind of grinder middle 6 minutes, maybe not the worst strategy for Mike Grier here. So yeah.
Absolutely. And there's already so much like top 6 level skill in the Sharks prospect pool, right? Like guys like Quentin Musty and Igor Chernyshov are still coming through that I think are going to be pretty useful in like a second line capacity if they're able to really hit. And a guy like McKinney would just make things slot in I think, a pretty sensible way with how the lineup falls. But as you mentioned, we have one more player to talk about who is a very, very, very fun defensive player and could really shut some things down.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's very easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and I can save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan your long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com to save 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year.
Let's finish it up. We're going to slide to the blue line here and talk about a defensive prospect. I can already feel Sharks fans don't roll your eyes when I say he's a left-handed defenseman, because I know we have 1,000 left-handed defensemen in our pipeline. Please don't roll your eyes. But still, we're going to be talking about Jacob Rombach. So 6'6", 201-pound left-handed defenseman playing with Lincoln in the USHL, is going to Minnesota this year. 57 games, 3 goals, 15 assists, 37 shots on goal. That is a big boy, Sebastian. So what makes Rombach such an intriguing prospect?
Ooh, there's a lot to kind of dig into here. I think like he's relatively mobile. Like he's a good skater for his size. I wouldn't maybe against everyone else. He's probably a pretty average skater, but pretty powerful lower body. Only needs 2 or 3 strides to close gaps from 20 meters away. He's a really big customer who closes gaps very aggressively. He's a really solid rush defender, and he's an expert at containing play with his reach, with his physicality. He just smothers on the boards. And
he's 6'6". He puts his arms out. He's touching
literally
the rink.
It's great. It's wonderful defending. It's very effective, especially at this level of competition. But what makes him interesting, because so many players, I think he's not the only player in this draft that can bring that quality on its own. What makes him special is that he pairs that with a really, really, really high-end retrieval game. He's awesome in the breakouts. He's really excellent. Constantly checking his shoulders, scanning his surroundings, can make a forechecker miss with a little shoulder shimmy. And I mean, seeing a 6'6" guy with a little shoulder shimmy on a retrieval, making an agile winger completely look stupid, going the wrong way, and just accessing space and making a great first pass. He's really, really reliable in those situations of getting the puck out of the zone with control and having the combination of being able to kill plays when they're coming into your zone and immediately and very effectively and quickly setting the puck back up the ice makes him a guy that brings a lot of offense a bit indirectly. He's not the guy that's going to get many points at all. He has literally 0 points in his last 10 games. And this season, he's at 18 points in 57 games in the regular season, but no points in the playoffs. He's playing defensive minutes almost entirely. But what he's doing with that is shifting the play, going the other way. So he's having an impact on offense by creating turnovers and very quickly getting it up to his wingers to go back the other way. And in that frame, with that mobility, with good defensive awareness, he's rarely caught out of position. He's not a guy that chases hits. He's composed and structured and stable. And that stability, I think, is something that'll make a lot of NHL teams think pretty hard in that late first, early second round range. And he's off to the University of Minnesota, which is a very strong program that's also seen a real exodus of talent this season. We've seen all the guys like Oliver Moore and Sam Renzel, and 12 other guys seemingly that signed their ELCs at one point, like Jimmy Snuggerud as well. So all the offense is kind of leaving, which is going to mean that I think next season, bring in a guy like Rombach to just solidify things defensively. He might be playing some pretty big minutes on that team and see a decent amount of deployment for a freshman coming in from the USHL. And I think with that, like, kind of trajectory and like where he's going for his development, he's a player I'm very happy to swing on and bet on. Intelligent guy, very, very predictable in a sense. Like, you know what he's giving you every single night. Yeah. I think that's something that the Sharks need. You need someone.
Coaches and GMs love that. They love throwing a guy over the board. You know exactly what you're getting every shift. You don't have to worry. Like, it sounds like that's what he is, right? Which
Sharks defenseman can you say that about, like, right now? Are there
Luca Cagnoni? But that's because he's the best.
Of course. And Rombach is the exact same thing in like the absolute opposite like frame and profile, right? Like, you're not getting dynamic offense.
Oh, they need to be partners. I just want to see the 6'9" or the 6'6" guy with the 5'9" guy. Like, we got it with Vinny Dearnaz and Luca Cagnoni, but I want like Rombach Cagnoni just partnered up for the rest of the time. Sounds great to me.
Sounds very fun. And I've seen Rombach play on the right side a couple times as well this season in Lincoln, and he looked very comfortable there. So for Sharks fans, I know they're like right shot defense is kind of what you really, really want to be working on. But bringing a guy like Rombach, you can play him on the right. I think Cagnoni would be a wonderful pairing mate. Like, you're bringing it up as like a funny thing with the juxtaposition and sizes, but
the skills match perfectly.
Yeah,
like,
wonderfully.
Yes.
And whichever, honestly, I think with that pairing, I would probably play Cagnoni on the right.
Which he has played on the Barracuda. He's played a lot on the right with Jimmy Schultz, who's like a defensive defenseman, shut things down type of player. And then Luca, you go do your thing. And yeah, it's worked pretty well between those two. So I could, definitely see that. So love it.
He's a great fit in that sense, and he's just so fun to watch. He's a play killer at his heart, and in terms of like the all defense guys in my region this year, there's no one that just like plasters a smile on my face every time I open up my computer to watch him play like Jacob Rombach. He's consistent, he's reliable. He's not a guy like there's other bigger defensemen like Maceo Phillips in the NTDP this year, who's also like 6'6" and like 227 pounds or something absurd. But he's a guy whose mobility can kind of be exploited to beat him wide. Like, that containment, I think, is a bit less thorough with him. With Rombach, he just smothers everything in his radius, and it's something that NHL teams are going to adore. And he's just made for the playoffs. And Lincoln is currently like 2 wins away from making the Clark Cup final right now. They're playing the Waterloo Blackhawks, and they lost game 1, they won game 2, and they're off to either play. I think that they're likely playing the Muskegon Lumberjacks right now, who are up 2-0 in their series against Dubuque. So maybe we see a Rombach versus Václav Nestrašil kind of final there in the USHL.
If those two guys hit, there's going to be a small earthquake in the Midwest. Those two guys.
I mean, hey, right wing versus left defenseman, like they're going to go up against each other.
So with Rombach, though, like, it does feel, because I know a lot of Sharks fans, like, they're very much on like the Fiddler train, like, go get Fiddler. If you can't get Fiddler, Rombach feels like a pretty solid replacement type of and I feel like Fiddler's going to be maybe pushed up towards the late teens, early 20s. But if you can get Rombach, who does a lot of the same stuff, you feel like maybe you might have found a different solution there.
Yeah, I think you get a lot more defensive solidity maybe with Rombach. Like, Fiddler can be a bit leaky at times, but Fiddler's a way better skater with more offensive upside. But he's also great in the breakout. So you get the combination of strong rush defending and strong breakout ability with both these guys, but just in like different formats. I think Rombach might be more akin to like a coach's favorite than Fiddler, but Fiddler will probably get more hype among the fan base at his NHL peak than a player like Rombach would.
Makes sense. So, all right, what do you think he needs to, right? You mentioned Minnesota. He's going to probably have a chance to play some big minutes there. What do you think he needs to kind of work on as he progresses through his college career?
I'd love to see him add on to his breakout game rather than just being a really good first pass or a little shoulder shimmy to make someone miss and just being like a one thing, to be able to link those plays together and to move the puck up the ice a bit more as well as a transition carrier, because he's a decent skater and he's so huge. Like, because he has that combination of like that intelligence, being able to make guys miss, end that frame. He's just a locomotive when he gets going and gets some speed behind him. So I think just adding on to what he already does well is kind of the route. I wouldn't try to like change the way he plays the game. He's never going to be like your like offensive defenseman or like your true puck mover, but that breakout game is something that could probably see a bit more like building blocks added on to what's already very strong. And just like maybe the consistency in his scanning and his awareness, like any young player, it's still sometimes that things can fall apart when you're playing like better opposition. Things get intense, and you're focusing just on what's in front of you rather than being aware with what's right at your back. That can still happen sometimes, but that's pretty much the same with every single defenseman in this age group, unless you're named like Matthew Schaefer. Everyone else still has some growing pains there, but he's a projectable guy. He's going to be, I think, like a number 4, number 5 defenseman, and if he's like your number 4 and you pair him with a guy like Luca Cagnoni, and you have like that's a really fun second kind of pairing to work with longer term. And even like if he's a complementary guy, like if Cagnoni can kind of hit that Lane Hudson-esque upside with time, maybe not quite the same production, but bring that kind of play to that level with that offensive creativity, Rombach could maybe be a complementary piece on a top pairing. He's never going to be, he can never like drive play on a top pairing in his career, but he, with the right fit, he can maybe fit in there. And I think with the Sharks, there's so many like open slots in the defensive core that he could fall into that he would make sense as a draft pick here.
Makes sense. Sebastian, thank you so much. I know things are starting to continue to ramp up here for you. Hopefully we'll get you back on here at some point again to talk more second round type of guys as you like. But where can the people find you? Where can they find Locked On NHL Prospects?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, everything with Locked On NHL Prospects you can find there, like on Spotify or on YouTube. Doing a lot of episodes here in the coming months leading up to the draft. Lots of scouting reports, like I mentioned. The one on Nestrašil has just gone up when this will be posted. And for my personal work as well, like over at _Sebastian on Twitter is where I kind of post a lot of my things. And you can find my work at eliteprospects.com. We're going to have our final rankings coming out in early June, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And got some write-ups there as well in terms of diving into individual prospects games. So lots of content coming your way from me before the draft's going to hit.
That EP guide, man, when it hits, it is that's like just clear out the rest of the day because that's all I'm looking at. I think is my draft Bible. As soon as that thing hits my email, that is ready to go. So yes.
And it's dense, so there's still a lot of work to put into it in the last month. We're all basically sprinting going into it, but it's going to be worthwhile, and we're very excited to publish it.
Awesome. Sebastian, we'll talk again soon. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Thanks so much.
And that wraps things up here for today's show. A huge thank you to JD from over at Locked On Sharks for doing this. I always enjoy our conversations and talking about the players who fit nicely in with Mike Greer's plans there for the organization. And for all those listening, thank you as well for tuning in and listening all the way here to the end. Always appreciate your focus and your questions. And if you're listening on YouTube, leave us a comment down below what you thought about these potential fits. If you're a Sharks fan, which player gets you the most excited to potentially become a San Jose Shark at the draft? And if you're not a Sharks fan, is there any player here that you think would be a particularly good fit in San Jose? I would love to hear from you down below. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please do make sure to make us your first listen of the day. We always appreciate our everydayers here on the show. And for your second listen of the day, you can head on over to Locked On Fantasy Hockey, where Flip and Steel break down everything that you could possibly want to know to build yourself a sustainable and competitive fantasy roster. But that is all here for today's episode. Thank you, as always. I'm your host, Sebastian High, and I look forward to catching you tuning in again very, very soon.